Vince, thank you for posting this on YouTube for me. To give you guys a little bit of background on who I am a doctorate of interstellar anthropology. I was a special consultant to the CIA and the NSA during the late 90s on a project they dubbed Red Rock. The U.S. government had somehow come into possession information that in Iraq, in the ruins of the ancient city of Ur, Sumerian city, the archaeologists working there, some French archaeologists, had found a device, and I was brought in as an expert on this culture, as an expert on these ancient artifacts, to basically tell them what I thought it was and what I thought it would do. A very strange device. It was really cool, though. It had crystals and, let's just say, a lot of moving parts for something that was at least 4,000 years old. And what I told them was that, according to legend, this was a device so powerful that only kings were allowed to know how to use it. And those kings passed down this knowledge. It was a very complex series of basically procedures that had to be met, and the machine would then create a very low frequency of sound. This was capable of moving large stones. This was capable of destroying your enemies. This was capable of creating rain. This was capable of creating earthquakes. This was basically the most powerful device ever to be on this planet. And the U.S. government was very concerned that Saddam Hussein was going to get his hands on this, figure out how to use it, and the rest would just be, utter hell. So I was brought in to figure out how we could get in there and find the device. If they could come up with some pretext to get us into Iraq, was what they said, would you know where to look for it and how to remove it? I explained to them what they would need from just a pure physics standpoint to remove the device and transport it. After about 5 minutes of them discussing it, they said that could be arranged and they'd get back to me. And indeed, over the next few years, I was called in on multiple occasions to consult with them for them to get my insights on some of these legends. Now, it's important to note that these people were not typical government employees. They were very well dressed, very well manicured, very well mannered people. It was pretty obvious to me from early on that I was dealing with folks from the global power structure, old money, if you will. Now, the legend goes that long ago, existed on the earth, some proto-species of human beings. The Anunnaki came to Earth. They genetically modified them to be smarter and more capable of being their slaves, there to mine gold for them. And the Anunnaki would check in from time to time, and whoever had the most gold would get these great, what they would consider presents from the gods. That could range with it from anything from the destruction of one's enemies to maybe a good harvest that year because the rains would come. And indeed, this device that they found in Ur was believed to have been one of those presents. It was something that was very powerful and that when used correctly could be aimed in the right direction to control the weather. It could cause an earthquake. Your enemy's city could literally just swallow it up into the sea. You could also transport yourself back and forth to Nibiru on certain occasions to give them their homage, pay them their tax, so to speak. And I was brought in on one occasion because they couldn't figure out basically how to use it. And I was very upset. I said they had no idea what they were messing with. And they sat me down and basically told me off. They said that, listen, I had no idea who they were and what right they had to use it, and that if they couldn't figure out how to use it before December 21st, 2012, that everybody on Earth would be dead. We would be wiped out. And they were deathly serious. And these were people who had never missed a meal. They had never gone without. I don't think they'd ever had a bad thing happen to them in their lives, and they were scared to death by the prospects of what would happen if they couldn't get this to work. They asked me to take a look more carefully, basically. And after some convincing, I said that I would. Now, it's important to note here that the global power infrastructure has been in place for millennia. It doesn't matter who's President of the United States. It doesn't matter who's Secretary General of the United Nations. It doesn't matter what Hugo Chavez does or what Vladimir Putin does or doesn't do. And it doesn't matter how many treasury bills the Chinese buy up from the U.S. Treasury. What matters is that a select few on this planet control a vast majority of the wealth. And they have done this since the beginning of time, basically, because they were the ones that were favored by the Anunnaki. They're the ancient kings of the Sumerian civilization. And my being an expert in this, I was asked basically to figure out if I could translate some old tablets that are the instruction book on how to use the device. And to make a long story short, I did, and it does work. Now, the U.S. government already had some of this type of technology figured out by retro-engineering quote-unquote UFOs that they had found. A great example is HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program up in Alaska. Has caused several earthquakes and freak storms, and a lot of people blame it for Katrina. And so the information, they had bits and pieces of it. They just basically couldn't figure out some of the words that needed to be said, because this device is something that you can speak to. It's actually like ancient voice recognition software that runs this device. Now, it's important to note something else, and I will send Vince more of these videos and try to get the word out in bits and pieces as I make my way around the globe and try to avoid being captured. But for right now, suffice it to say, there is a reason why everybody wants to buy your gold. Right now they're doing everything that they can, the powers that be, to keep a lid on one of the biggest heists in history, which is the fact that Fort Knox is empty. The U.S. gold reserves were looted and taken to France. From France they were taken to Belgium, and currently they reside, I believe, somewhere in Russia. The gold reserves in China, however, are very attractive to these folks, and they are planning a series of attacks. The Stuxnet computer worm virus that attacked Iran's nuclear reactors was designed by this group. I've always just referred to them as the powers that be. The mainstream media is controlled by them. They don't report on them. The stories that come out about them are quickly shuffled to the side or laughed off as just being silly. But these folks do control the world, and the reason they want to try to keep things from going bananas is they want to be able to buy up as much gold as they can. And so they're trying to get everybody they can to send in their little gold trinkets, their old necklaces. They're smelting them down, and they're getting ready for when the Anunnaki come back. And now that they've got the device working, they feel like they can complete this plan. Because I know what they were trying to do, they want me dead, and they'll stop at nothing to see that that happens. They blew up an entire wing of my university, destroying my lab, destroying my records, destroying my work, just to try to kill me. And unfortunately for them, there is a piece of information that I did not tell them about the device. A trump card, if you will, that I decided to keep in my back pocket just in case they tried to somehow double-cross me. And I'm going to end this for right now. I will tell you all about it in part 2. I won't tell you where I'm going, but I'll talk to you next time. Over and out.